I never thought my Grubhub order would lead to a neighbor's arrest, but that's exactly what happened when Sheila Watkins, our HOA president, decided my deliveries violated community guidelines. It all started 3 months ago when I moved into Oakwood Estates, a pristine suburban neighborhood with matching mailboxes and lawns cut to exactly 3 inches. I work from home as a software developer, which means I order delivery more often than I'd like to admit. After a particularly grueling coding sprint that lasted several days, I treated myself to a larger-than-usual order from my favorite steakhouse. I tracked the delivery on my phone and saw the driver had arrived. But after 5 minutes with no doorbell ring, I checked the app again. Delivered, it claimed, with a photo of my food sitting at a door that was definitely not mine. I immediately called the driver, who insisted he'd followed my instructions exactly. The lady who answered said she was expecting it, he explained, confusion evident in his voice. She even gave me your name when I asked. That's when I first encountered Sheila Watkins, 60-something, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair styled into what can only be described as a weapon-grade bob. As president of our HOA, Sheila patrolled the neighborhood with the dedication of a soldier guarding a high-security facility. I walked 3 doors down to her house, having recognized her distinctive teal front door in the delivery photo. When she answered, I could smell my steak dinner wafting from inside. "Excuse me," I said politely, "but I think the driver mistakenly delivered my food here." Sheila's face remained impassive as she replied with a syrupy sweet voice. "Oh, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. The HOA has a strict policy against food deliveries after 6 p.m. on weekdays. It's outlined clearly in Section 12.3 of the Community Guidelines." She smiled thinly, adding, "As the Homeowners Association president, it's my responsibility to enforce these rules. Consider this a friendly first warning." I stood there dumbfounded. "But that's my dinner. I paid for it. Can I please have my food?" Sheila's smile never wavered as she began closing the door. "I've already disposed of it properly. You'll receive a written notice about the violation tomorrow. Welcome to Oakwood Estates." The door clicked shut before I could respond. I was out $75 and still hungry. I ordered pizza from another service, fuming the entire time. The next morning, sure enough, a formal violation notice appeared in my mailbox, printed on official HOA letterhead. It cited a rule I later confirmed didn't actually exist in the bylaws I'd received at closing. When I emailed the HOA board about the incident, I received only automated responses. I decided to let it go. $75 wasn't worth starting a neighborhood war in my first month. Little did I know, Sheila was just getting started. Over the next few weeks, a pattern emerged. Any time I ordered food delivery, Sheila somehow intercepted it. She seemed to have a sixth sense for delivery vehicles entering our cul-de-sac. Sometimes she'd claim the driver had violated parking regulations by leaving their vehicle idling. Other times, she'd tell them I had canceled the order but forgotten to notify the restaurant. Once, she even pretended to be my wife, claiming I was indisposed and she would take the food instead. After losing nearly $300 worth of meals, I decided enough was enough. I installed a doorbell camera and documented each incident, sending formal complaints to both the HOA board and the management company that oversaw our community. The other board members seemed sympathetic but reluctant to challenge Sheila, who had apparently ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist for nearly a decade. "You don't understand," one neighbor whispered to me after a particularly tense community meeting. Last year, she had the Petersons' maple tree removed while they were on vacation because she claimed it dropped too many leaves on the sidewalk. The year before that, she fined the Garcias daily until they painted over their daughter's chalk drawings on their own driveway. Nobody stands up to her. I decided to change my strategy. Instead of fighting Sheila directly, I would outsmart her. I placed a substantial order from Le Chateau, the most expensive French restaurant in town. The bill came to just over $520, a ridiculous amount to spend on takeout, but worth it for what I had planned. I included several expensive bottles of wine, Wagyu beef tartare, truffle-infused dishes, and decadent desserts. Then I waited, watching through my window as the delivery driver approached. Like clockwork, Sheila emerged from her house and intercepted the driver before he reached my door. From my doorbell camera, I could hear her explaining that community regulations required her to accept all deliveries. The driver, looking confused but unwilling to argue, handed over my expensive order and left. Instead of immediately confronting her, I called the police non-emergency line. "I'd like to report a theft," I explained calmly to the dispatcher. "My neighbor has been taking my food deliveries without my permission, and today she took an order worth over $500. I have video evidence of this and multiple previous incidents." The dispatcher informed me that an officer would be dispatched shortly. 20 minutes later, 2 police cruisers pulled into our quiet cul-de-sac, lights flashing but sirens silent. I watched from my window as they approached Sheila's house and rang her doorbell. Her expression when she opened the door was priceless, confusion quickly morphing into indignation. I could see her gesturing animatedly, probably explaining her self-appointed authority to confiscate deliveries that violated non-existent HOA regulations. I stepped outside when one of the officers approached my house. "Sir, your neighbor claims she was acting in her capacity as Homeowners Association president by confiscating unauthorized deliveries," he said, sounding skeptical. I showed him the neighborhood bylaws on my phone, where no such rule existed. Then I played the doorbell camera footage from that day and several previous incidents. The officer's expression grew increasingly serious as he watched. "And the value of today's order?" he asked. $523.47, I replied, showing him the receipt on my phone, including an $80 bottle of Bordeaux and a $100 Wagyu steak. The officer nodded gravely. "Wait here, please." I watched as the officer returned to his colleague and Sheila. Their conversation became more intense, with Sheila's hand gestures growing increasingly frantic. Then, to my astonishment, one officer took out handcuffs while the other read Sheila her rights. I couldn't hear the exact words, but I didn't need to. Sheila's face had turned the color of overcooked salmon as she was escorted to the police cruiser. Later that evening, the officer returned to take my formal statement. "Your neighbor is being charged with grand larceny," he explained. "In our state, theft of property valued over $500 is a felony offense. She claimed she was disposing of the food for health and safety reasons, but we found your intact order in her refrigerator and the wine on her counter." The officer couldn't suppress a small smile as he added, "She seemed genuinely shocked to learn that her position as HOA president doesn't grant her legal authority to take other people's property." The community response was immediate and overwhelming. An emergency HOA meeting was called the following evening, where Sheila's behavior was the only agenda item. I arrived to find the community center packed with neighbors, many of whom had their own stories about Sheila's overreach. The remaining board members looked uncomfortable as resident after resident recounted similar experiences. When my turn came to speak, I simply played a compilation of my doorbell camera footage showing multiple thefts. The room fell silent as they watched Sheila repeatedly intercept my deliveries, sometimes still in her bathrobe, other times rushing out in gardening gloves or with a phone pressed to her ear. The cumulative evidence was damning. The board voted unanimously to remove Sheila from her position effective immediately. The vice president, a retired accountant named Howard, announced they would be conducting a full audit of HOA finances going back 3 years. "We've also received notice that Ms. Watkins has been released on bail," Howard informed the stunned crowd, "but she's facing potential prison time and substantial legal fees." 2 days later, I was working at my desk when a knock came at my door. I opened it to find Sheila standing there, looking nothing like the confident neighborhood tyrant I'd come to know. Her perfect hair was limp, her makeup minimal, and she clutched a designer handbag with white-knuckled hands. "My attorney says I need to make restitution," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She thrust an envelope toward me. "This covers all the food you lost, plus interest." I accepted the envelope without opening it. "Thank you," I said simply. She seemed to be waiting for something. Forgiveness, perhaps, or an offer to drop the charges. Instead, I asked, "Was it worth it? All that effort to control your neighbors over such small things?" Sheila's composure cracked. "You don't understand," she hissed, her voice trembling with fury and fear. "I've given everything to maintain standards in this community. Everything. And now I might lose my real estate license over this misunderstanding." Her eyes welled with tears. "The preliminary hearing is tomorrow. Do you know what a criminal record will do to my career? My reputation. As I watched her standing on my doorstep, the neighborhood tyrant now facing real consequences for her actions, I felt no satisfaction, just a weary sort of justice. "That wasn't my intention," I said honestly. "I just wanted to eat my dinner in peace." Sheila opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the electronic chime of my phone. "Excuse me," I said, glancing at the screen. "That's my lunch delivery arriving. And this time, I think it will actually make it to my door."